1936, Richard A. Close. I was born in Delray, Michigan, better known sometimes as Zug Island. My mother's name was Myrtle Neiman, and my father's name was John Close. My father came from Ireland, from Belfast, and my mother grew up in Detroit. I was born in 1936. I was the fifth child out of 7 children that my mother had in 7 years. I am better known as the baby of the family. I grew up in Lincoln Park, Michigan, and lived there for 19 years. I went through their whole school system from kindergarten through 12th grade. I grew up on Hanford Street, about a block from Lafayette Elementary School.
Do you remember the address on Hanford?
And that was, no, I do not remember that. I went through K through 8 at Lafayette Elementary School, and I was approximately 8 years old, and I was a little errand boy for my mother. Back then, women mostly had dreams, and they had a dream book. And they'd look up a number in the dream book about their dream, and my mother would give me 2 or 3 cents, and I would go to this little grocery store and make a bet. And if that number came in, she might win $4 or $5, which was a lot of money back then. My brothers and sisters all went through the Lafayette School and also through Lincoln Park High School. From living on Hanford Street, we moved to Outer Drive. On Outer Drive, I had approximately 2.5 miles to walk to school. And it was very cold and a long way at that particular time. And growing up back then in my early years, we were extremely very poor people. I used to have to wear socks as mittens in the wintertime because we had no money to purchase gloves. Back then we'd wear our shoes and the soles would have holes in them, and we would take cereal boxes and cut them up and put them inside the shoe to cover up the holes so that our feet wouldn't get too wet when we walked to school. After that, I was approximately 18 years old, and we moved to a little home on Stewart Street, 968 Stewart, and only had approximately a half a mile to a mile to walk to school. When I was 14 years of age, I had to get a job, as growing up we had to pay room and board. I had to pay approximately $10 a week for food and to sleep in our home. There were 5 children living in a 2-bedroom home. My parents had 1 bedroom, and my 3 sisters shared a bedroom, and my brother and I lived in the basement in the wintertime.
And then what were aunt and uncle's names? What were your siblings' names? Dolores?
Lottie.
No, your brothers and sisters. So.
Oh, my brothers and sisters' name, the oldest was Dolores, then Dorothy, and then John, or better known as Jackie, and my sister Beverly. So they were approximately 7 years older than I was, the oldest one. As you know, I said, I was a baby out of 5 children in 7 years. We lived in 968 Stewart for probably 15 years. I went through the Lincoln Park High School. In my process of growing up, I was extremely fortunate to be a great athlete. I graduated from high school receiving 11 varsity letters in 12 years, which is extremely good. I played football, baseball, and basketball during those years. After high school, I attended Michigan Normal College in Ypsilanti, Michigan. But knowing as smart as what I was, they wanted me to wear an Army uniform because ROTC was mandatory at Michigan Normal. I told them no, I wouldn't do that, and I didn't. Lo and behold, in December of that year, I got my draft notice and was inducted to the military service because I wouldn't take ROTC. I went into the military service and served my basic training, in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. In Fort Leonard, Missouri, I met a very close friend, and he asked me if I would like to go to Europe with only 11 months to serve in the Army. I said I would be very fortunate to do that. He sent me to Europe, and I ended up being in Bordeaux, France, in the military service. Fortunately, through my experience in high school and being an exceptionally good athlete, I played football and baseball in the military service and traveled through Europe playing on Camp Boussac baseball and football teams. After that, I was discharged from the military service after serving 23 months in the service. I was fortunate enough to qualify for a VA loan so I could attend college. Upon going to college, prior to that, I was fortunate when I got out of the service, I was signed by the Chicago White Sox to play baseball. I went to their spring training for 1 year and got injured, and I had to give up baseball. I came home and was offered a scholarship to Iowa University, which of course I was too smart. I didn't want to go that far away from home, and I turned it down. I ended up getting a full scholarship at Hillsdale College, where I received a scholarship for 4 years, and I went through on the GI Bill from the service. At that particular time, a friend of mine asked me to go to Ypsilanti to visit his girlfriend with him, and there I met my wife, Joanne Versalino.
So, that's the camera there, Mom. It's on. Bailey says hello. So tell me about your mom and dad.
Well, don't you want to know who I am first?
Sure.
I'm Joanne Versalino Close. And I was born June 5th, 1936 in Detroit. And I was my parents' first child. You're in my way. I am the star of this, not you.
And you have a brother? You said
No,
first child.
not at that point I didn't.
Well, I got that part, but in your life you have a brother. You said,
Well,
I was born the first child, which infers you have a second or third or fourth.
I was born in Detroit. I was born in a house on Yosemite Street. That is now considered the inner city, but it wasn't back then.
So not in the hospital. When you say born in a house, meaning you were actually delivered in a house.
I was born in a house, yes. And so was my brother. That was not unusual back in those days. I lived on Yosemite Street for about 3 or 4 years, and then we moved to Collingwood, which was also in Detroit, and it was closer to my grandma's house, probably a block away at the most, in a larger house, and my parents bought that house. They must have been renting on Yosemite. The Collingwood address was probably 2 miles from Yosemite, so it was really very close. I went to school at McCarroll Elementary, long walk, the proverbial mile, but we all of us kids walked together. I lived like a block from my grandma, and I apparently was the apple of her eye because I was the only grandchild at that time, and she called me Cookie. And I spent a lot of time at her house, and obviously when I got a little older I could walk back and forth. But as to my parents, my mother was one of 4 kids. Her maiden name was Kalkaitis. She had a younger sister, Joyce, and then, 2 younger brothers as well, but Joyce was quite a bit younger. In fact, Joyce is only 9 years older than me. So as we lived in Detroit, I think I was probably like a little baby doll for Joyce. But we grew to be a friend, aunt and niece. We did a lot together in our older age. My dad was born in Cournier, Italy. Courgne, and that is in the very northwest corner of Italy, almost at the edge of the Alps. It's right where Italy, France, and Switzerland almost meet. He came from a big family. He had 5 brothers and 2 sisters.
Do you remember their names?
Oh yeah, there's Guido, Charlie, Curly, Blackie. Oh gosh, can't remember their other names. The 2 girls were Nina and Lena. They were not twins. My dad's family was the classic way that people came to America, I guess is the way to say it. It's what I read about in the textbooks when I was in high school. My grandfather came over, and like many immigrants, they went to where their fellow countrymen were, which in this case was Southern Illinois and the coal mines. So my grandpa worked a while. He went back to Italy, and when he came back, he brought 1 or 2 of his sons back, stayed here for several years, went back to Italy. And I understand my dad was conceived on one of these trips because he's considerably younger than his siblings. And he eventually brought everybody back. My dad and my grandmother were the last 2 to come back. 1 sister remained in Italy. She was married, so she didn't want to leave. And she still lived either in the same village or near the same village all of her life. That would have been Lena. So anyway, back to me.
Oh, so back to your dad. So do you remember any of your great-grandparents or your grandparents on your dad's side?
My dad's dad died at a relatively young age. I can't tell you what his age would be. I never saw him. I did see my grandmother. She was living with my Uncle Blackie, and I have pictures of me with her when I was about 5.
And they lived down in Illinois?
Yeah, Southern Illinois. In fact, Southern Illinois is loaded with Versalinos. Valère, that area, DuQuoin. The family was big to start with, and of course with all the grandkids or the great-grandkids now, it's even larger. Unfortunately, several of my generation are no longer with us.